Every level of a battle droid explained in detail. Level 1 is the B-1 battle droid, the iconic foot soldiers of the Separatist Army. B-1 battle droids were the main infantry in the droid army. Initially, they were commissioned by the Trade Federation and designed by Geonosians. Then, these droids were produced by Bactoid Armor Workshop, a group owned by the Techno Union. As such, many members of the Confederacy had a hand in creating the staple of the army that would fight for them. Using Geonosian droid foundries, which were replicated on other planets, B-1s were produced on a massive scale. These factories pumped out millions of droids at an absurd rate, using the cheapest parts available. A battle droid stood at 1.93 meters, or 6 feet 3 inches. I'm 6'3", so I'd be seeing eye to eye with these guys, which is crazy to me. The average B-1 was equipped with an E5 blaster rifle, and sometimes thermal detonators. B-1 commanders, who were designated by yellow markings, might have an SE-14 blaster sidearm as well. Occasionally, heavy B-1 units were deployed that utilized an E5C heavy blaster cannon. Despite their mass production, these battle droids had many specializations that were seen across the Separatist military. Some were designated for driving tanks or firing heavy guns. These droids had green markings on their head and chest. Pilots were designated with blue markings. They could fly C-9979 landing craft or operate multi-troop transports on the ground. B-1s meant for a security role were painted red. Other B-1s were rocket droids of sorts and were given orange markings. We see them in space checking escape pods in the Malevolent's Clone Wars episodes, using jetpacks and headlamps. Initially, B-1 battle droids were created to take orders from a central computer that was in close proximity to their position. When the Trade Federation invaded Naboo, the central computer controlling every droid on the planet was in the core of the Lucrehulk-class battleship in orbit. After the failure of Naboo, it was clear that having to rely on a central computer was a serious weakness. So later on, the CIS developed independent thinking B-1 battle droids. New and old B-1 models mixed in the Separatist army, with the independent B-1s looking down on their older comrades. They may not have had to rely on a central computer, but the independent B-1s had many problems of their own. Normally, a droid would have regular memory wipes to remove quirks and prevent it from developing too much of a personality. But the B-1 soldiers rarely had this, and despite the fact that they were independent, they were made so cheaply that their minds and processing power were limited. And having to deal with a war, the battlefield around them, receiving orders, and reacting to the enemy was a lot to process. Glitches happened frequently as a result. So the B-1 droid's way of dealing with this was typically to talk, and talk. This often led to B-1s being abused by their commanding officers, whether it was verbal attacks from a tactical droid or getting their head punched off by General Grievous. Sometimes it was deserved though. Because of the gradual changes in their programming, B-1 droids often questioned orders or froze in the heat of a battle when the situation changed suddenly. Multiple times in Clone Wars, we see a droid directly question their commanding officer. Luckily for the droids, the CIS could care less. The B-1 droids always outnumbered the clones on the battlefield, and that was all that mattered. Even with superior numbers though, B-1 droids weren't capable of much, as a simple Class 4 droid. But with even more powerful droids by their side, they could be a very dangerous opponent. This is Level 2, the B-2 Super Battle Droid. B-2s were the same height as B-1s, but they were much more imposing due to their size and black-colored armor. Supers were much more durable because of that armor. They could typically tank many blaster shots before being taken out, although one well-placed shot to the head could do the job, depending on the blaster being used. In rare cases, B-3 battle droids were developed, which were B-2 droids equipped with cortosis armor, a material that could not be cut by a lightsaber. Due to their high cost, the Separatists never produced many of that variation, and it's why more super battle droids weren't made during the war. They lacked the independent thinking of the B-1s, but were still much more expensive to produce. B-1s had to be capable of doing numerous tasks, from scrubbing a floor on Ryloth to monitoring the bridge of a Separatist flagship. That's why they needed to be able to think for themselves. B-2s, on the other hand, were strictly programmed for combat. Their processing was very specific and extremely limited. They could talk, they just didn't really need to. The B-2s in Revenge of the Sith are anomalies.
Hey, you!
Super battle droids were all equipped with blasters in their wrists, which featured a rapid-fire mode and a rocket launcher. In contrast, B-2HA droids came equipped with a homing rocket launcher in one arm as a secondary option. B-2RP droids came equipped with rockets in their feet, which could be used for significant periods of time in space or in the atmosphere, as they are seen obliterating Republic forces over Quell. Finally, there's B-2RP rocket troopers, an elite red-colored variant of the rocket droid. In addition to the rocket boots, they had 2 thrusters attached to their back and shoulders, which allowed them to fly much faster and be more maneuverable than the average B-2 rocket droid. These units were deployed in large numbers at the Battle of Ringo Vinda. If it weren't for the constant presence of Jedi generals on the battlefield, B-2s would certainly have decimated the clones time and time again. In missions with Torrent Company, the super battle droids are always Anakin Skywalker's focus to best protect his men. And for good reason. These droids are extremely formidable, but not the best units the CIS has to offer. This is level 3 of a battle droid, the Specialist. I thought about sticking the Aqua droids in the same tier as the B-2s, but when I really looked at these guys, I realized they're too unique to ignore, and despite their limited uses, they're used quite a bit in the Clone Wars show. They're the best example of a specialized type of droid in the CIS Army. The AQ series battle droids were produced by the Techno Union. Standing at 9 feet 3 inches, or nearly 3 meters tall, this was a scary sight for any clone trooper in the way. And given that they had the same armor as a super battle droid, they were incredibly tough to take down. Similar to B-2s, Aqua droids had a built-in laser cannon on their arm, except theirs was retractable, which allowed for them to use both hands like a normal droid if they needed to. Heavy Aqua droids had a missile launcher on their arm instead of the retractable blaster, just like the B-2HA. In swimming mode, their feet turn to propellers, allowing them to move to any underwater location with ease. And since the droids don't need to breathe, these units were exceptional at beating any opponent underwater. Now, they could reconfigure to fight on land, as seen at the Battle of Commando, and they're still very effective, just not as useful. You see, they walked very slowly on land, just like a B-2 droid, with perhaps even less mobility, and they presented a much larger target given their height and size. But the Separatist attack itself was just a diversion, so who knows? Even in their limited numbers, the Aqua droids directly attacked many key structures in Tapoka City, and even made it to Shaak Ti's command station. On Mon Cala, it took the combined strength of the entire Mon Calamari population, along with clone troopers, Jedi, Gungans, and even some Quarren to defeat the entire Aqua droid army, which just goes to show how superior they are in the right conditions. Next is level 4 of a battle droid, the Destroyer. Also known as Droidekas, Destroyers were one of the most feared units in the CIS ranks because of their unique abilities. These droids had personal shield generators that produced a deflector shield capable of deflecting fast-moving objects and most kinds of blaster bolts. This meant that they could not be killed unless a Jedi was around, or if artillery was involved. Since destroyers were usually deployed with other units, running close enough to get inside the shield was rarely an option. Later in the war, some clones figured out that throwing a droid popper at a slow speed would allow the grenade to roll through the shield, which would disable the Droideka. But this strategy was also incredibly situational. While no one else could fire in, the Droideka could certainly shoot out, with its powerful dual twin blaster cannons attached as arms. The Droideka walked on 3 pincer-like legs that made movement extremely slow. Thus, in combat, they were virtually locked in one position. Its 3 photoreceptor points that acted as eyes were also attached to the front of the droid and could not be adjusted. Thus, the droid lacked peripheral vision and could not see behind itself at all, which was a serious weakness. If a Separatist position was overrun, a destroyer was useless. To move at longer distances, Droidekas could coil up into a ball and roll around. This was helpful for getting to a place, but turning to a ball meant the shield generator had to shut down, so a Droideka would be completely unprotected in the heat of a battle if it chose to do this to escape. Well, not completely unprotected. The Droideka was coated in a thick bronzium armor, capable of withstanding multiple blaster shots. But in a coiled position, destroyers can't shoot back, and many critical areas are left exposed, such as the eyepieces or the shield generator. Interestingly though, once coiled, a destroyer could roll at speeds of 75 kilometers per hour, or about 45 miles per hour. But because of all these factors, the deployment of destroyers was very situational, just like the strategies that were used against it. Typically, these droids were utilized indoors, such as on board a Separatist frigate or to protect a base. They excelled at defensive situations, but were hard to implement in other areas. Occasionally, Droidekas were reconfigured into a single-fire sniper mode that was extremely extremely accurate at longer ranges. These were Mark II destroyers. As seen in the Clone Wars, these droidekas couldn't deploy their shield in this form, and instead relied on their thick front armor to absorb blaster shots, leaving only their eyes and the gun barrel exposed. But, as Anakin realized, their sides are completely vulnerable in this position, once again making the droid very situational. The mode only works from a very protected position, ideally from a high place. Separatist landing craft and MTTs still carried some normal droidekas into battle, just to offer support to the B1s and B2s. Similar to B2s, droidekas were specifically programmed for combat, except that they had absolutely zero social capabilities. Their producer, Colicoid Creations, intended for them to be strictly a mobile gun platform, nothing more. I can't say the same for our next level. Level 5 of a battle droid is none other than the Commando droid. BX series Commando droids were specifically made for Commando-style missions, as well as providing security for important assets. We see them in action at the Citadel prison as its primary security force, and on a mission when the Commandos single-handedly take over the Rishi outpost. But these droids were hardly limited to their intended uses. Just a squad of these droids can make a huge impact on any battle. Like any good thing in life, these droids were absurdly expensive to make, even when compared to droidekas or B2s. Thus, they were made in small numbers and deployed sparingly. Commando droids were more expensive because they were simply better in every conceivable way. BX series droids were given better independent thinking capabilities, with a greater sense of tactics, situations, and more. They were given the ability to communicate and think quickly on the fly, too. On the Rishi moon, the Commandos took clone armor and used their voice modulators to perfectly imitate the clone trooper voices to confuse Rex and Cody when they arrived. Commandos were skilled with many weapons, capable of accurately shooting an E5 blaster with one hand, or accurately using sniper rifles and rocket launchers. These guys were also programmed with extremely in-depth knowledge of other methods of combat, with complete mastery of the vibro sword and better hand-to-hand combat skills than anyone. They could even function as riot control or hold a position using personal shields and stun batons. There's literally nothing they can't do. Commandos are even seen piloting bark speeders and small craft much better than B1s in battle situations. Not to mention that the Commandos were among the most durable droids the Separatists had to offer. Only a headshot could take one out, and it usually took multiple headshots to get the job done. Even in their limited numbers, Commando droids were seen across the galaxy in virtually every campaign. As long as the right equipment was available so they could have the right kit, Commando droids could help with anything. The next level of droids played a similar role to the Commando droids, but somehow they are so much better. This is level 6 of the battle droid, the Magnaguard. The IG-100 Magnaguard is a scary droid. At 6'5" and nearly 300 pounds, nobody should be able to move like they do. And with their iconic cloak look and a mask modeled after Grievous, they were truly imposing to any enemy. The producer, Halowan Mechanicals, cooked with this. These droids were self-motivated, which is a unique type of programming that truly makes a droid free-thinking. They could learn from experiences, make their own predictions on what might happen, and do things solely because they feel like it. This is what makes them such excellent fighters. In real time, a Magna droid can learn an opponent's moves so it can adapt and predict them, using its own database and knowledge of fighting, but also from its own memory and past experiences. So for example, if a Magnaguard fought a Jedi using a certain lightsaber form, the droid would quickly notice this and use the best moves it knows against those patterns. That and the fact that General Grievous specifically trained them to kill Jedi made them some of the most dangerous droids in the galaxy. Magnaguards could fight Jedi because of their special electro staff, which could withstand blows from a lightsaber. The staff's only weak spot was in the middle, but a Magna droid could continue using it even if it was split. On top of their sheer skill with the electro staff, Magnas were adept at using many other specific weapons. They could use many blasters, especially sniper rifles or even rocket launchers. If needed, they could fly practically any starfighter as well. My favorite thing about Magnaguards is their ability to keep fighting no matter what. Even after losing an arm, Magnus could keep fighting just as well against a Jedi. After losing both legs, they could still defend themselves. And even if they were decapitated, they could keep going using photoreceptors in their chest to see. Most elite Jedi were capable of handling Magnaguards, but when they worked alongside Grievous, these droids were nearly unstoppable. Guard is in their name, and despite their numerous skills, Magna droids exclusively serve served to protect high-profile targets, primarily as security. Grievous made sure they were with him at all times, which occasionally involved combat situations, such as when he boarded the Republic cruiser to capture Eve Koth. Count Dooku also preferred to have Magnaguards with him for protection, but he deployed his to capture Anakin Skywalker on 2 different occasions. But they weren't limited to the top of the CIS. Dooku loaned them to the puppet king of Onderon to protect him as he imposed Separatist rule. You can't get much better than a Magnaguard. Only one type of droid sits above the rest. This is level 7 of a battle droid, the tactical droid. The original tactical droids were only in charge of simple battlefield tactics on a relatively small scale campaigns. For example, only one tactical droid was in charge of the occupation of the village on Ryloth, while others were stationed in other regions on the planet to lead the local droids. Eventually, later in the war, the Techno Union developed something legendary, the Super Tactical Droid. The ST series droid was unmatched by any other droid in the galaxy in terms of intelligence. They could process enormous amounts of information on the battle at hand, think about long-term strategy, who their opponent was and their history, and so much more. These droids were such free thinkers that they chose names for themselves. The most famous ST droid was Kalani. Dooku trusted the droid with overseeing the entire occupation of Onderon and didn't question the droid's report that it was time to leave the planet. These droids had the best tactical analysis there was. It was truly the closest thing to having one of the best and most experienced human generals and admirals for your army. That's why the ST series droids served directly under high-ranking Separatist officials. Kraken, for example, served alongside Admiral Trench at Ringo Vinda and helped Trench with the analysis of the Tup situation. Kraken was sent to personally protect Tup when Trench shipped him off to Dooku, and when Anakin came to the rescue, the droid managed to land 4 huge punches that nearly took Anakin out before Skywalker chopped him up. And Kraken was so valuable that he was saved and rebuilt later on to serve with Dooku. Clearly, ST droids were one of the most essential pieces to the CIS war machine. The super tactical droids were so smart that the Separatists could essentially leave them completely on their own to run military operations and trust that things would run well. Even if a legend like Anakin or Obi-Wan came along, there was still a good chance that the ST droid could figure out a way to stop them. The droids did develop massive egos because of this, but it'd be hard not to. Imagine being this smart while commanding mostly stupid droids and dealing with dumb people. I'd think highly of myself too. When Kalani heard the galaxy-wide order to shut down the droid army, he ignored it and prevented his units from being shut down on Agumon because he thought it was a trick by the Republic. Because of this, Kalani continued operating with his droids until Ezra and the Ghost crew found him nearly 15 years later. In a way, I guess he was right about it being a trick. Maybe the super tactical droids were right in being so confident in themselves. And that is the 7 levels of battle droids.